Ian Schieffelin, a star power forward for the Clemson Tigers, will be coming back to Clemson, but not for the basketball team. He's exhausted all 4 years of his eligibility on the basketball court, but per NCAA rules, he has a fifth year in a different sport, and he'll be using that to play football. We'll talk about that, but first I want to dive into this Clemson offensive line. Clemson's offensive line over the past 11 NFL drafts has only had 4 NFL draft picks. That's John Simpson in the 4th round, Ankrum in the 7th round, Jackson Carman in the 2nd. That's the high point. And Jordan McFadden, who was great for Clemson, went in the 5th round. Beyond that, surprisingly, Marcus Tate didn't get picked this year, which I thought was terrible. I thought he deserved to, but really not at least modern history and recent history, a good track record for the Clemson Tigers in terms of putting pros into the NFL specifically at offensive line. I think that starts changing, and it really begins with a big performance from a veteran group. And then we'll talk about the young guys. I really like this true freshman class coming in, and they're going to, I don't know if they hopefully won't be needed to provide depth now, but they might be the heir apparents with so many guys leaving. So with that said, let's dive right in. Last year, you have Tristan Lee at left tackle, who with a 62.3 PFF grade was solid, if not spectacular. Marcus Tate was really good at 71.3 PFF grades, really solid. And that's what, and he's not small. I know he was been a little bit dinged up with injuries over his career, but he's really been pretty good. So I thought it was a real shame he didn't get drafted, and pretty surprising. I figured he'd at least go late, but he doesn't go. And then Linthicum comes back after a really good year as a true starter. 65.6 PFF grade, didn't necessarily stand out, but maybe that's kind of in all the best ways. It wasn't a problem. He was solid. Walker Parks returns. He's got all the red shirt and the injuries and the COVID year, so he comes back. He's a veteran, but he hasn't been really great since he was a youngster, freshman, sophomore, playing right tackle. He was really good there, and then he moved to right guard. He started getting injuries. He had an ankle injury one year. And he hasn't really quite been the same. I don't know if it's health, if it's the position change or what, but he was a big prospect that was really good early. Can he be healthy? Can he have a year that catapults him to the NFL? He's maybe the biggest wild card on this offensive line, which is weird to say because he's the most experienced guy, but I still think he has a high ceiling, but his floor, at least last year, showed to be the lowest of everyone. And then, of course, the star player on this offensive line is Blake Miller. He's a guy who definitely could have gone pro this offseason, but Clemson's collective, kind of got their ducks in a row and were able to keep him. He definitely would have been drafted, maybe not in the first round, but definitely, first 4 rounds, I think. And he's rock solid, one of the better, he was all first team all ACC, one of the better right tackles in the country and certainly the conference. So with this group, you've got a lot of veterans. Blake Miller is going to be off to the NFL after this year. Same with Parks, same with Linthicum, and same with Lee. Now, Tate's gone, so in his place you have Harris Sewell, presumably Harris Sewell. We don't know for sure that it would be Sewell, but most likely. And compared to Tate and comparing to last year, that is a downgrade. But you also expect everyone to make progress and grow and become better as a player. And so he got his first big-time taste of experience last year, and now he's going to be fully a starter. And so you'd expect him to take another step. So I don't know if you expect him to necessarily be as good as Marcus Tate was. Marcus Tate was a senior. Sewell's a junior, so maybe it's another year before it gets to Tate's level. I don't think it's a huge problem. I don't think it's a huge drop-off, but it's notable and certainly worth mentioning. But regardless, this is a veteran group. Even Sewell's a junior. And the rest of them are all in their last year. So they'll be replacing 4 starters. So let's look at the depth behind them, for injuries, but also thinking about the future. And these two guys came from, one of them will be a sophomore, Elijah Thurman, and Jacobs is a true freshman. And these are guys I'm really excited about. Was not perhaps not as thrilled with last year's offensive line class, but Thurman was the guy who's a real bright spot. They brought in 4 guys, and there's 2 that I was pretty high on. Thurman was a late ad, and he started against Pittsburgh. And, of course, he got hurt his ankle, actually fractured his ankle and got that tightrope surgery that Tua from Alabama got. And so we'll see. He didn't play in the spring, which I kind of would have expected him. So we'll see what his health's like. but he could be possibly the first guy off the bench, at least at the tackle positions. And then Braden Jacobs, that's Brandon Jacobs' kid from the Giants. He looked unbelievable in that spring game. His tape is incredible. So very highly rated recruit. I watched the highlights and it validates, the great offer list. It validates the high star rating. Then I watched him in the spring game, and he looks as solid as anyone on that offensive line. So I'm guessing here, right tackle, left tackle. That's sort of just whatever. It doesn't really matter. But you have two reserve tackles who I feel pretty good about. Thurman pending health, but Jacobs is a true freshman. I mean, ideally you redshirt him just because you've got so much depth in front of him. But I feel that if you needed to use him in a big game, I feel pretty decent about it. At least as good as you could feel about a true freshman. So I also like, you're going to lose Liam Miller after this year. And if Thurman and Jacobs are the 2026 starters to tackle, that's a good pipeline. I feel pretty good about that. So that's kind of step one as you get into the depth. The next stage getting into the depth is on the interior. And the interior is already weaker, at a starter level. You can just see the PFF grades there. It's already weaker than the tackles. And Colin Sadler's probably like a swing man. So if Sewell gets hurt or struggles, or Parks or even Linthicum, center could be weird. And they could certainly shift guys around. But I think the first guy off the bench for an interior line position would be Colin Sadler. And then I said there was two guys from last year's offensive line class that I was really high on. One was Elijah Thurman, a late take. The other was Ronan O'Connell out of Nashville. And he was a 3-star, but had a decent offer list, and his tape was great. A lot of pulls where he moves really well. And I think we saw, I guess it was 2 years ago now, prior to that Notre Dame win, Clemson's offensive line just couldn't figure that out. And they had to basically dumb it down and just run inside zone because they couldn't do the pulls, the things necessary for Riley's offense. I think O'Connell's someone who could be really good on that interior. And there's other guys. There's Dietrich Pennington. There's Ian Reed. But I'm pretty high on O'Connell. We haven't seen him, in real life, in a real game. But just a redshirt freshman now that I'm high on. So that's sort of the first grouping of depth there. And then as you go beyond that, Watson Young, he's the one from Daniel High School. He had a torn ACL. I wasn't super high on him coming out. Don't know that he's going to make a huge impact this year. And Mason Wade is the one from Virginia that flipped. He was close to going to Virginia Tech, or at least that's what the rivals were saying. But he ends up going to Duke, then decommitting and coming to Clemson. It was a late win as Clemson was trying to put together an offensive line class that had kind of fallen apart or just didn't come together. So that was a good win at the time, and he could be good. But I'm really excited about these true freshmen coming in. I was extremely impressed with their tape. I talked about Braden Jacobs. I think he's a future star and will start, 2026. I think he's going to be great. Gavin Blanchard was a 3-star UCF commit. Didn't seem like a big time get. And I put on his highlight reel thinking, I'm sure he'll be okay. And I was extremely impressed. The very first play on the highlight reel is him running seemingly like a wide receiver on this pull. I mean, he just is zipping across. He just moves really well. Good tape in pass protection and run blocking. I had to text some people and be like, what is everyone missing on Blanchard? Am I not evaluating this right? He looks great. And others said, yeah, he's possibly a hidden gem. So really high on Gavin Blanchard. Easton Ware, he came from the same high school as Gideon Davidson. Same year, he comes in. He was a road grader. They ran the ball a ton up there in Lynchburg, Virginia. And so he may need time to figure out his pass blocking, but I think you like the toughness, the run blocking for sure. So you'll want to redshirt him and kind of see what he can develop into, but definitely some potential there. Easton Ware, he had offers from Oklahoma, Michigan, Notre Dame, Wisconsin. So pretty big time recruit. Rowan Byrne, though, is from New York. He's from New Rochelle, which is about 40 minutes north of Yankee Stadium for perspective. So kind of like the suburbs, but pretty close to New York City. I'm not super familiar with the competition level that they have there. But at least from the tape, he's playing through the whistle. He's hustling upfield, and he had offers from Penn State and A&M, which is always a good sign to, validate that you're seeing he looks good on tape. Other big programs want him. Our coaching staff wanted him. So I think that's a solid win. And then Tucker Gaddis is an interesting one because he was committed to Kentucky. He has got two brothers who are tight ends at Kentucky, and he wasn't a huge, highly rated commit or anything like that. But it's interesting that they pulled him away, and he moves really well. He excels in pass blocking and run blocking. And this is another one where I'm kind of questioning, like, this is just highlights. Maybe I'm missing it, but he looks awfully good. Maybe others overlooked him because they just assume he joined his brothers in Kentucky, which was just about to be the case. But this is a big class, 5 incoming true freshmen at the offensive line. And I think they see that a lot of guys are leaving. They haven't really stocked with star recruits the last 2 years, kind of hence Matt Luke getting his feet under him and doing this now. So they're throwing some numbers at it. And, we've called for more recruits on the offensive line because it's just so hard to land guys. And they don't really even transfer as much. At least the stars don't. They're very expensive and hard to add. So you really still got to do offensive line through high school recruiting. And I really like these recruits. So I feel really good about the long-term future with Matt Luke at offensive line. There's going to be a lot of guys leaving after this season, a lot of seniors leaving. So it's really, really critical to have a strong class here. And I think with Jacobs, with O'Connell in the class before, with Thurman in the class before, who didn't redshirt, that's why you don't see him here, feel really, really good that kind of just in the nick of time, they've started to kind of get this offensive line pipeline going. So that's really encouraging. I think Clemson's offensive line will now start to buck the trend where you had only four O-linemen drafted in the last 11 drafts. I think it's very possible you could have multiple drafted in this upcoming NFL draft. And then as these younger guys get to the NFL, maybe we start changing that story. So I also wanted to talk about Ian Schieffelin. Oh, I shouldn't have jumped there too quickly. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and jump right to it. So Ian Schieffelin, he was excellent on the basketball team, one of the star players, averaged 12.4 points, 9.4 rebounds, was excellent. And he was on the team for 4 years, really a star, but also kind of a stalwart of the team. He played through injury late, and so he had kind of a disappointing final game against McNeese. But now, get his back healthy before football season, he can come in. He's going to play tight end. And it reminded me of this other guy you see here, which if you don't recognize, that's Jimmy Graham of the Miami basketball team. He played 4 years on the basketball team before a 5th year where he has this weird NCAA rule where you get 4 years of eligibility, not counting redshirts, in one sport, and then you could have like a bonus year in another sport. And he did it in football. So let me pull his stats here. So for the Miami football team, and here's him as a basketball player, right? So that was 4 years. So when Graham in 2009, his 1 year is a I guess I don't know if you call it, I guess a senior, but it was almost like a 5th year senior, but not a redshirt senior. He played 13 games for Miami. He had 17 catches for 213 yards, and he had 5 touchdowns. So he was not a star player by any means, but a red zone threat, a guy who used his height. And he's 6'7", 6'8", so very similar to Ian Schieffelin. Ian Schieffelin is 6'8", 240. So how can Clemson use Schieffelin? Clemson, I think, they lose Jake Briningstool, who was a 6'6", tall, pass-catching tight end. But I actually like what they have in Olsen Pat Henry. Olsen Pat Henry had a better PFF grade overall than Briningstool did last year, because Briningstool, and this is why he went undrafted, was a poor blocker. I mean, it was a below-average blocker. And Olsen Pat Henry was a solid blocker and still a good receiver, not as good as Briningstool, but the gap there on blocking was just favored Olsen Pat Henry by so much that he was actually the better overall tight end. And so when I look at this year's Clemson offense, you got Wesco, you got Antonio Brown, you got TJ Moore, you got Tristan Smith, you've got plenty of weapons. So I think blocking is like job number one. So I don't see Ian Schieffelin by any means becoming a starter. They've got plenty of weapons on the outside for pass catching. You need someone in line who can block, and I love Olsen Pat Henry in that role. And then I also love redshirt freshman Christian Bettenker, who can kind of do both. But then after that, you have Josh Sapp, who's not as tall. He's not a very good blocker, at least not yet. And he's a good receiving threat. So I think him and Ian Schieffelin are battling for time in sort of that role as maybe the third primary, his role is primarily as a pass catcher, not a blocker. I could see Ian Schieffelin getting maybe only 200 yards, but 5 touchdowns, kind of similar to Jimmy Graham, like I just talked about. He's a guy at 6'8". I don't usually love fade routes, but if you've got Ian Schieffelin on one side at 6'8", you have Tristan Smith on the other side at 6'5". You have one maybe run across the middle, one run a fade, and you let Klubnik decide, right? And if you got them out there and they can't really attack the middle, so that's a good formation to run out of too. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. But I think gadget's not the right word, because when I say gadget, I think at least my mind goes to like a Darren Sproles gadget running back, quick tosses out of the backfield. That's not Ian Schieffelin. Ian Schieffelin's the win a jump ball, because he's an elite basketball player who could jump, who can get up, and has incredible height at 6'8". So it'll be really fun to watch him. Don't expect him to be a starter. Don't expect him to get 500 yards. But if he gets 100 to 200 yards, but maybe more importantly, 4, 5, 6 touchdowns, I think that's what you're looking for. In any case, pretty little downside. Assuming this House settlement goes through, there's no limit to the 85 scholarships like there used to be. So it sort of doesn't matter. So 105 scholarships, you can't really spend them all on 4- and 5-star recruits. That there'll just be too much acrimony and fighting for playing time. So you want to give us a couple to redshirts, a couple to interesting kind of, for lack of a better word, gadget guys or true Clemson guys like Ian Schieffelin. I'm all for it. I think there's very little downside, certainly fun, and I think some upside to help the red zone. So let me know what you think of this offensive line, and let me know what you think of Ian Schieffelin joining the basketball team. As always, don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate it. And don't forget about our sponsor, Ready Vets. If you're in the upstate, they can help you out when your vet is closed and you need emergency care for your dog or cat right away. So don't forget about Ready Vets. Thanks for watching. As always, go Tigers.